At CitizenCon last week, we saw the full plan for base building and crafting, from small-scale single-person habs to industrial facilities processing hundreds of SCU of material a day. Org bases, customization, blueprints, ground-based resource deposits, different tiers and item stats, and more. Some of it seems to already be functional in the dev build and possibly even coming to players next year. I was not expecting all this. From Star Wars Galaxies to EVE Online, Star Citizen is seemingly making some great decisions in the player-driven economy, pulling ideas that were loved in other games. And these decisions may be the most impactful to the game since planetary landing was introduced all the way back in 2016. Today, I'm going to give you the summary of everything planned and how it could affect you from day one of playing the game all the way up to your end game. And if you want the more detailed explanation, make sure to check out the deep dive on my second channel, Space Tomato 2. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. To kick things off, let's talk crafting. One of the biggest changes coming to Star Citizen is the introduction of material value. Rather than just finding Agricium, gold, or Laranite out in the world, you'll find those same materials at different values based on where they spawn. Maybe the depths of a dangerous cave have the most valuable ores, or the canyons of a planet on Pyro the most precious rare minerals. This also applies to harvestables, fruits, plants, the ingredients of various drugs and medicines. All of these things will have the variability to make different quality objects, and that's where crafting comes in. Craftable items, which is everything in the game from a mining laser up to a full ship, will have statistics which can be edited through the use of higher quality materials. Every item will take 2 or more materials to craft, with the primary material being what determines the quality, and the secondary material having an effect on the speed of the craft or the overall amount of material needed. This all means crafted items in-game will have the potential to be better rated for certain things than purchased items, unless you purchase them from someone who's good at crafting, but we'll get to player selling later. Each item will fall into one of 3 tiers, with ships falling into one of 5, depending on the materials used to craft them and the research utilized to do so. Research is where scientific gameplay comes in. While research projects can act as a time sink for crafting gameplay, it can also call for specific tasks to be done to learn more about the item being crafted, such as creating said item a certain amount of times or using the item in specific ways. If these research actions make sense contextually, I do think this makes for a great system to encourage players to really specialize in crafting certain items and learning more of the unique natures of how they're used. This research may also be something more scientific as well though, like discovering additional materials or running experiments at your base. And if this all sounds similar to crafting in games like Star Wars Galaxies or EVE Online, that's because it is. Star Citizen is taking various elements from popular MMOs of the past to build a system that is player-driven but not controlled. Developers in the company come from these games, as well as other notable games of the past like Ultima Online. These similarities from these past games continue with the inclusion of blueprints. Blueprints are the recipes by which components, ships, and items will be crafted. These blueprints can be found in physical places and on physical items like datapads, but they are ultimately a physicalized item in themselves in that once you claim it, it is yours for good. You can't lose it and nobody can take it from you. They will also be stored in your library and usable only by you. There hasn't been talk of how copying these blueprints might work yet, or maybe how they could be susceptible to hacking, but maybe we'll hear more about that next year. So researching these blueprints can make them more efficient and raise the stats of the items you are making, giving you a unique edge and allowing you to carve out your own piece of the economy as a seller, building a reputation for you and your group. You'll use different types of fabricators to make these items. Chemical, nutritional, or item fabricators will be available for players to own and also usable as communal items around the game space. There are also very large fabricators for things like ships that we'll see later. The blueprints that are used for these items will be findable around the game, but more rare items, and even some that are common, will likely be something you can generally only receive from guilds or factions as you build your reputation and do more jobs for them. So maybe you'll get the blueprint to the Crusader C1 from Crusader if you do enough missions for them in the Stanton system. Or maybe you'll get blueprints for different power plants or quantum drives from R-Corp after doing missions for them. All of these aspects of crafting affect a huge portion of the game, basically anything a player can be involved in. Even as solo players, these activities will inevitably rope you in. As an explorer, finding the best materials will matter much more to certain individuals and factions. As a data runner, moving that data around and selling to the highest bidder can earn you much more credits per job. And that's not new speculation. That's an idea that was laid out in day one of base building being considered all the way back in 2018.
The value of that land, what you're going to have to pay in order to acquire it, depends upon a variety of objective criteria, as well as the seller's insight into that information, which we collectively refer to as knowledge. So knowledge within the game is a really fundamental concept that once you've acquired it about a certain area or a certain object, you're able to transfer that to other friends, you're able to transfer that to organizations, you're able to sell that information to public information brokers, or freely submit it into the public domain.
As a miner, obviously, your skill and knowledge of the game, your connections and resources for information, and your tools of the trade, whether purchased or crafted, will make all the difference. Looting in various uncontested zones, caves, city sewers, and distribution centers could find you items or blueprints that sell or serve you better. And the knock-ons go on, from refining to salvaging and beyond. Material value, item stats, the ability to craft goods and become a unique source of those goods in the overall economy takes some of the best aspects of the games many know and love and allows them to be experienced in a seamless first-person environment that revolves around customization and upkeep of ships, bases, and space stations. What we don't know yet is actually how this will factor into repair too. With the Maelstrom system, which I covered earlier this year, all items will be represented by their actual materials rather than just RMC or construction materials, and your ability to repair ships, vehicles, and items could make a big difference in the game as well. But when you craft all these items, it's not just for you to use them. There needs to be a way for you to pay back into the economy, sell your goods, and make money from your skills. Of course, the Banu Merchantman and the Kraken Privateer offer this option, but base building is where players will be able to truly capitalize on their craft and become a part of the Star Citizen economy. Base building is structured around a few different pillars: commodities and resources, security, and the resource management system. Players will create bases using a combination of various ships, ground vehicles, tools, and buildings. Each of these will allow for construction on different scales through the use of drones. Drones will act as the actual builders of your base, but also as a surveyor that provides an RTS-like top-down view of the location. In this view, players will be able to monitor the local geological structure, the distribution of resources in the area, and the resource network of the buildings that have been placed. This will include your power, providing life support, light, and industrial functionality, water, which provides various services to the people and structure in the base, shields, which protect your base if you're not in a high security area, which we'll touch on later, and freight for storage and other industrial functionalities. While the current resource network in 4.0 is focused heavily on ships, bases will require upkeep, monitoring, and engineering to run at peak efficiency as well. Just like with crafting, these bases and their different structures will be created using various materials, dependent on their quality and your own research going into the creation process. You'll be able to affect the hackability of your base, keeping it safe from saboteurs, your power and water requirements, making them easier to run, and the integrity of your base through resource-driven statistics and a 3-tier system, just like with crafting regular items. Bases will also not be a static item. While the resources you mine from the location will deplete over time, eventually requiring you to look elsewhere for goods, the base itself is also going to succumb to wear and tear, just like all the other items in the game. Your base can take damage from attacks, environmental effects from storms and general time in the elements, and degradation from use of the industrial facilities involved. In fact, if you don't upkeep or pay the taxes of your base, they can over time be considered vacant or turn into derelict buildings that may possibly feature their own loot or missions. And while you can delete those same buildings to save yourself the resources and rebuild somewhere else, there will be reasons not to spread yourself too thin just building everywhere willy-nilly. But with great responsibility and risk, obviously comes great reward. You'll be able to mine and refine materials at exponentially higher rates than through FPS items and even using some ships. You'll be able to use bases as way stations that lie on your org's supply routes, maintaining a network of freight elevators that can connect and transfer goods underground as needed. Or you can simply use it as a solo stash house for all the loot you find in the area, selling it later to other players as they drop by. You can even set up a whole network of bases across a planet to work together based on each of their local advantages. For those in my own org, the Garden Interstellar Initiative, you can rest assured we will be making a lot of use of this functionality as we focus on the Magnus nexus of systems to supply locals with the pharmaceuticals and other supportive services in-game they're looking for. If you are looking for a well-rounded org to join for this kind of gameplay in the future, you can go to gii.app on the screen right now, or visit the link listed down below in the description. And like I said, you'll find higher reward for your higher risk in these areas. Low security systems are going to leave you defenseless outside of whatever you invest into your own base, like turrets, walls, and shields. Though you'll also want to make sure you have enough defense to cover yourself while offline, whether from those investments, your own friends, or your org. In safer high security systems like Stanton, Terra, or Castra, your base will essentially be invulnerable due to planetary shields and NPC defenses that will spawn and save your base if attacked. But you won't be exploiting the absolute best resources in those areas. And this balance of security versus risk is a really big part of the base building game loop. Of course, this satisfactory light gameplay is exciting, reaping the rewards of your local resources, maintaining a central refining operation for your crew in the local star system, and maintaining a sprawling hive of activity for just yourself or you and an org is pretty cool. But the most interesting aspect of this goes back to crafting: storefronts. The ability to host a physical storefront in your base to maglock items indoors and allow players to visit, view your wares, and possibly even buy your unique goods, and the freedom to decide if you want to do this in a risky but highly valuable low security area like Pyro, or in a fully supported high security location like Microtech, are all some of the best things I've heard existed in a game like Star Wars Galaxies. We don't know just how much of the game economy will be truly controlled by players, since the original goal was just 10% effect on the overall system. But it's safe to say that with these plans, players can expect a flourishing and diverse player-to-player trade system that focuses on enough depth that no one player can become the go-to source for a wide range of goods. This system is meant to emphasize specialization, long-term progression, and an active effect on the economy that any player can pursue at any time throughout their career. And a lot of it is well into development. Having started in March 2024, we can already see quite a bit of this on the smaller and larger scale in the gray box phase and functioning in the dev build of the game. This doesn't mean it is particularly close to coming out, but it does mean many of these details have been considered for gameplay and code that has actively been written and tested. This is a crucial difference from many of the ways that large-scale gameplay initiatives have been proposed in the past, and again, indicative of that post 4.0 push to create a game, rather than just a game environment. Crafting is offering a truly transformative experience to Star Citizen, with a single model of each ship and item no longer guaranteeing that simply owning the pledge store model of a ship gets you the best performance, and blueprints allowing players to mix up the playing field versus those who may be starting with those pledge store items. Reputation rewards and progression beginning to dictate more of what a player can earn and do, and resource, item, and ship quality determining more variability in various types of gameplay. The system changes just about everything about Star Citizen's offering to players. Base building creates the first true home for players, an opportunity to pay back into the economy in a big way, and the skeleton for large corporations or small mom-and-pop shops alike to leave their mark on the verse. Overall, it will be some time before we see just how well these systems can be pulled off in Star Citizen compared to its loved predecessors like Star Wars Galaxies and EVE Online, but I think it's safe to say that given the plans at least, these features are truly a certified game changer. Thank you for watching this video. There's a lot to consider here and still some information surrounding these systems I didn't cover in the interest of your valuable time. From cross-shard complications regarding base building, the degradation of the bases you make, the full stats system, or the fact that ships have 5 tiers instead of 3, there will be many things to learn about over the next few quarters as these features get closer to release. And this is all before we get into player-controlled space stations. For more on that, check out my last video looking at plans for Star Citizen 1.0, or tune into my second channel, Space Tomato 2, where I go into deep dives on these topics and podcasts about the game itself. My most recent episode of the podcast is featuring Luke Stevens taking a look at Star Citizen from the outside, and I'll say it's a pretty good watch, linked down below. Once again, thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something new, and I'll catch you in the next.